Now, this video is going to be a follow-up video to the one I posted a couple days ago, asking all of you if you thought the Star Wars fanbase can be healed, and if so, how, or if maybe it's just too late at this point. And so what I'll be doing is reading through some of your comments left on that video and giving my thoughts on some of them. But before we get to that, let me just take a quick moment to say thank you for the replies. I appreciate all the time and thought you put into them, and I'm sorry I can't get to more of them, and that some truly great ones will invariably slip through the cracks, even though yes, I do try to read through all of them before starting to work on the video. And as usual here, some comments were picked because they were highly rated, others were handpicked by me personally, and some were just randomly chosen from the crowd. But as always, we'll of course start with the top rated comment, which this time came to us from Julio Asius, who said, "When Lucasfilm admitted that they had no plans for the current trilogy and used making room for new characters at the expense of the older ones, it broke my heart." And really, I think you're touching on probably the two biggest issues with the sequel trilogy, at least in my opinion, and clearly in the opinion of many others since this was the top-rated comment. And that is, how can you go into what was the most highly anticipated set of films in history, which sequels to that original Star Wars trilogy almost certainly were, even more so than the prequels. I mean, even if you love the sequel trilogy right now, you still have to scratch your head at not having a solid plan or roadmap in place before proceeding. I mean, how do you not handle this with the absolute utmost of care to try and ensure something that will please most of your long-term fans and also bring new ones into the fold as well? And hence, it'll do what you really want it to do then, and that is make a ton of money and ensure the franchise will be profitable long-term. And this all ties into your second point, that abusing old characters to push the new ones is a really bad idea. Because I really don't know how they thought sacrificing characters some people had loved for decades, and could have been profitable for decades more, would lead to them loving these new characters. Really, it just all makes no sense whatsoever. Alright, let's now move on to this comment from Babatomy, who said, "If Star Wars is to succeed, it needs a clear vision of its future while maintaining respect for its past." And this very much ties into the previous comment, and it's something I absolutely agree with. Yes, Star Wars should move on and try new and completely different things, but it shouldn't have done that at the expense of what came before it, what made it great in the first place, and what people have always loved about it. Somehow this next trilogy needs to still feel like Star Wars, yet be, in essence, something totally different from what it's always been. Now granted, that sounds contradictory, and it's not going to be an easy task, but it's really what this next trilogy must find a way to pull off. Next up then, this comment from Darth Revan, who said, "Just allow Legends to continue and make the best of the current canon too. Two options, two continuities." And wow, does that ever sound so simple. And the truly sad part is that it is simple, and I really don't understand why they don't continue on with Legends. I guess it's done in an effort to not confuse people about what is and isn't canon, but walk into any bookstore and you'll see shelves full of old EU books that are clearly marked as Legends. And that's all you have to do. Keep making new Legends books and put that label on them, and the people that are going to read them are going to be able to separate the two from each other. It's really not complicated, and it would make them even more money, so I don't understand why they don't do it. Now on to this comment from Willie's Reviews and More, who said, "Yes, I do think Episode 9 can unite the fandom, especially since JJ has directed it, and to me, he understands Star Wars a lot more than most directors of today, arguably more so than Rian Johnson, but I still like The Last Jedi." And you know, honestly, and to be completely fair here, I think The Force Awakens shows that JJ understands Star Wars pretty damn well, and he also knows what the average fan wants out of it, certainly better than Rian Johnson does. The problem is, for some fans, the more hardcore fans I'd say, it felt like a complete cut and paste of what Star Wars had always been, and as I've said so many times before, though I completely understand why The Force Awakens was the way it was, that it was a welcoming back to Star Wars for the more casual fans, a lot of fans didn't need to be welcomed back. We hadn't gone anywhere, and we were ready for something new that played off the old, not reused it. And recently JJ, and I think it was in that Vanity Fair article, said something to the effect of, "Screw it, I'm going to make Episode 9 how I want to make it instead of beholdening myself to the old ways." And it seems like a lot of people interpreted that as him saying, "Screw it, I'll do whatever I want with Star Wars." But what I want to believe he was trying to say is that I'm not going to do another remake, I'm going to try to make something new and different instead of just copying and pasting. Or at least that's what I hope he was trying to say. Okay, let's move on now to this comment from Jim Riven, who said, "I'm not sure if it's fair to say that the fan base is broken, rather that the fan base is solid while the franchise is broken. If there were a great film released tomorrow, Much though by no means all would be forgiven, it would have to be remarkably good though. And you're absolutely right here, and despite the way I may word things in a video title or whatnot, I don't mean to put the burden of blame on the fanbase. And yes, there are some fans out there that do go too far or say inexcusable things, of course there are. But most fans just want great movies, it's that simple. And if they're given that, they'll be happy, and it's not impossible for a franchise to create a movie that a vast majority of the fanbase will love and enjoy. Just look at Marvel and what they did with Endgame. No reason Episode 9, if 8 had been handled differently, couldn't be set to do something similar at the box office. Alright, now onto this comment from Emanuel A, who said, "Personally, it would take a lot. They would need to reboot the sequel trilogy for me to be on board with them. But for everybody else, I think some good movies and proper treatment by the PR teams and Lucasfilm crew would help a lot. Also, firing most of the people in management and replacing them with respectful, genuine people like Dave Filoni. And if anyone could bring balance back to the fanbase, it's George Lucas's chosen one, Dave Filoni. Because, like you say, the guy is genuine and he's just overflowing with love for Star Wars. I love listening to him talk Star Wars, like he did at Celebration with him and Jon Favreau about The Mandalorian. I could have just sat there for hours listening to those two talk Star Wars. And that's what you need. When I listen to J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson talk Star Wars, it's more sterile. I don't feel the love. Doesn't mean they don't enjoy the franchise. It just means they're not the ambassador that a Dave Filoni could certainly be. Okay, and now onto this comment from the Dork, who said, "I think one simple movie cannot heal the entirety of the immense wound opened in the Force of this community, especially if the movie is going to be mediocre." I agree, and at best a mediocre movie would do, well, pretty much nothing within the fan base, and it would just be neutral. Kind of like Solo really didn't cause much of a ripple one way or the other, to be honest with you. At worst, though, it's just going to put the final nail in the coffin for many fans on the fence right now. Realistically, the best case scenario is a really good movie, because I really don't know if The Last Jedi set this last movie up for possible greatness. A lot would have to be manufactured right in the final story here for an incredible film and ending to the saga to come out of Episode 9. Next up here we have this comment from DeeDeeOne Cool, who said, "It's my opinion that the first prequel movies aren't that great, but the third is amazing. I hope the sequels can do the same." And yeah, though I do enjoy episodes 1 and 2, I think 3 is a fantastic movie, and it's far and away better than both of those first two. Now, can that happen again with Episode 9? Well, it's not impossible, but I think the big difference here is kind of what I was talking about in that last comment, is that the setup wasn't there with Episode 8 to make 9 great, whereas with the prequels, the setup with Episode 1 and 2 was there to make number 3 great. It's just unfortunate that 1 and 2 weren't maybe executed a bit better on their own, instead of just being a lead up to this greatness that was Episode 3. Okay, now onto this comment from A. Daraa, who said, "Hi Thor, glad to hear you and your fiance had a lovely trip. Definitely agree you have to put the phone down or tablet down, etc. and appreciate the moments," and that is absolutely true. Anyway, that being said, it relates to something I've been thinking about for a while now, and after listening to your thoughts today, it brings it back and makes me wonder again. Are we seeing the start of a new phenomenon in filmmaking? I mean, even 10 years ago, social media was not as used as it is today, and people having platforms in which to promote their ideas and opinions were still relatively rare. Nowadays, before a movie is even released, especially a huge, culturally iconic franchise like Star Wars, people are already proposing theories, etc., and now they have social media to promote them. Maybe scriptwriters and filmmakers are getting intimidated. I mean, how can you claim to be original and groundbreaking if a fan, someone who isn't even part of the movie industry, is pretty much already plotting out your brilliant work? Sometimes so accurately, it's scary. Just a thought, but I always found it so disturbing that filmmakers, looking at you, Rian Johnson, got into full-on Twitter wars with fans. How immature and unprofessional, it blew my mind. I think there was a lot of support initially for The Force Awakens, from fans of all ages. I remember the marketing for it. Mark and Harrison supporting fans, the charity programs. It was exciting, and to me, the vibe was hopeful and passionate, and also inclusive, and a time for celebrating and coming together to honor what was and the legacy that would continue. Disney had me sold. Then The Last Jedi comes, and we get Your Snoke Theory Sucks. The marketing strategy to me felt completely different. Not exciting, not that as a Star Wars fan I was being included in the fun, but shut out. We don't want your enthusiasm, please. We're trying to make a subversive masterpiece. And for me, that's when everything seemed to go downhill and just got worse and worse. even with the rise of Skywalker. I mean, we didn't even get a little teaser trailer until a month ago. The marketing sucks in my humble opinion. There are so many people who can put exactly why the fandom has fractured. No initial outline for the movies, bad press, social media snafus, plots that don't make sense, characters that could be good but have no logical development, etc. The complaints seem endless. For me, somehow all this started when it felt like I was no longer a fan if I had a different opinion. When the Disney Lucasfilm marketing became less and less. When the reporting on the latest Twitter battles became more important than getting people hyped for the film. That, to me, is tragic. Okay, first here, let me say, very well said. And second, let me apologize in advance for only touching on your points very briefly, because there are several of them and you made them pretty damn well, and there isn't much I can say beyond them. The one I will focus on, though, is the first one. Are writers and directors these days intimidated by fans who have platforms and can propose theories that are maybe as good as anything they can crank out? Well, as humbly as I can, let me just say that, to some degree, yes, I do think there is evidence to that, because that whole "your Snoke theory sucks" thing was clearly meant as a jab at those who put Star Wars theories out there. And then there was that whole thing about attacking Mike Zero, which is further proof that they do pay at least some degree of attention to what the fandom is saying or theorizing about. Now, how much does that influence them and their work? Well, that is certainly debatable, but Rian Johnson did make a movie that, very intentionally it feels, tried to be the very last thing any of us expected or would have predicted. Though I'm sorry, Ryan, one of my very first videos here on YouTube was predicting that Rey's parents would be deadbeats, so better luck next time. Okay, now in an effort to get several more comments in before wrapping this up, I'm just going to quickly fire some off, minus my commentary afterwards. Starting with this one from Drew Manning, who said, "It's a dumb idea, but if they introduce the concept of a multiverse, and this whole trilogy has been a dark timeline, would slightly save it for me. Yes, Kathleen Kennedy should be fired, and I have no hope for Episode 9. When they ruined Luke, they took any hope I have. I no longer care about the galactic struggle." Then onto this comment from Kenji, who said, "If I hear that Episode 9 was a satisfying conclusion to the Skywalker trilogy, I will go see it cautiously. Otherwise, Star Wars dies with the disrespect shown to Luke." Next up, this comment from Karen Atkinson, who said, "As someone who has been around since the 70s, it will take a really quality film for fans not to lose that spark that is Star Wars." Alright, next up we have a comment from Reimagining Star Wars, who has a great channel of his own that I'd recommend you checking out. A link to it can be found in the description below. Anyway, he said, "You know, I just listened to a vid from 2017. Man, your audio has gotten better." And I'm so sorry you listened to one of those old videos. Anyway, I think Episode 9 will not necessarily heal the fandom, but it can reset it to where we are not at each other's throats. My hope is that it's good enough, that we close off this trilogy not doing any more damage. Then, in the future, Lucasfilm and Disney can begin to bring everyone home with a new trilogy. Next up, now this comment from Shade Blackwolf, who said, "I want the movies to be more like the Star Wars animated series, character-focused and full of heart, with proper menace for a villain." Now let's get to this comment from Sensei Saifu, I think I got that right, and they said, "No, the answer is no. Disney irrevocably destroyed the sequel trilogy with The Last Jedi after an already rocky start with The Force Awakens." Next up, we have these wise words from Ahsoka Tano herself, who said, "I think an old Republic trilogy directed by Dave Filoni would unite the fandom." And finally, this comment from Simon Perez, who said, "I think it's very simple to bring back the fandom. Just make good characters, bring back the magic, a great good versus evil story, use the lore correctly, improve artistic creativity, etc." And somehow doing that seems so very easy, yet so very hard at the same time. But after reading all of your comments, the best way to sum it all up is, many of you feel it's just about making good movies, or should have been about making good movies. That honoring what Star Wars has always been, the characters that came before, should have been a top priority, and that it hasn't been. And I think many people who are walking away from Star Wars right now just keep looking over their shoulder for some sort of sign that things will get better because they absolutely want to come back. And that's the thing about the angry Star Wars fans. They don't want to hate this franchise. They want to love it. Nobody really wants to fight over Star Wars, but they feel like fighting and speaking their mind is the only way to hopefully restore it to its former glory. And look, I know there are plenty of fans that, yes, do like what Star Wars is today, and we don't want to take that joy away from you. We just want to be able to share in it with you. And though it's impossible to make movies or tell a story that absolutely everyone will love, it's not impossible to create movies that a vast majority of fans will love and enjoy. And if Disney and Lucasfilm don't figure that out soon, then it's only a matter of time before a lot of fans will stop looking over their shoulder and will have completely moved on. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about what I or anyone else had to say in this video. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.